Hey, this is the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast. And as always, the bells of justice are ringing. Hey, it's season 3. It's 2025. It's the first episode of the new year. I'm going to jump right into it. I want to talk about Netflix, the big show, Monday Night Raw that just happened. I want to talk a little bit about something going into Netflix. Of course, everybody's talking about the Hogan Boos and the Hogan Blues. And then there's a couple other things I want to touch upon. One small spot with AEW. Before we do, though, please check me out on Spotify at the Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast. Click follow, subscribe. Hit me up on YouTube, the Good, Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast. And hit me up on Facebook at GBW podcast. I'd appreciate it. So going right into what we're going into is the Netflix. I was listening to Bischoff and Conrad Thompson, and they said it best. We are in the Netflix era. You had the golden era, you had the 90s, the attitude, whatever you want to call it. I feel between 2015 and now, they called it something that shows you how much I followed it. I felt that was kind of like purgatory or no man's land. So now I really believe there's a definition of what wrestling truly is. Modern day wrestling. As always, as I quote Conan, wrestling today is modern day wrestling. Get over it. And he's right. Netflix era wrestling starts now. Now, I may have touched upon this. I have before, modern versus traditional. Steve Kern made a interesting comment. We wrestled every night, sometimes double shots for TV tapings, some cities 52 times a year. Separate dressing rooms, no communication before the match, bigger men, no tennis shoes, protected the business. We wrestled off emotion of the audience. Now it's all about movement. Too much aerial, BS, no selling past moves. The last, way too many 2 counts, not allowed to mess with refs. Just my opinion, but what do I know? Oh, yeah, one other thing. We watched the matches before us, so we didn't repeat the match earlier. Example, Stan and I watching other matches, so the fabulous ones stood out as different. That's coming from Steve Kern. So that's his take on old school, and it has started the big argument, correct, of what really is the difference between new and old school. And he's right. The old school guys had a different way about it. But that's important to know before we get into the Netflix era. That no longer exists. Individuality, selling characters, that is in the past. Okay, that is not part of the Netflix era. And if you watched Raw, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's about branding. It's about the show. It's about going to a show, not going to see a particular wrestler. Because the champs weren't on the show. Not that that's a good or bad thing, but you weren't going to see Cody Rhodes. I'm sorry. You were going to the first night of Raw on Netflix. Okay, so here's another thing. Let's see here. Triple H made a comment, and I might have covered this before, but I want to cover it one more time. I'm going to put it up on the screen here for you. No, you're just old, dude. The stuff was great in your generation, and you learned it a certain way. But the kids today learn it a different way. And what they see and what they think is cool, then that's what you need to give them. I can't control that. I learned this 30 years ago the hard way. It is no way, shape, or form about what I want. It's about what they want. If it becomes about what I want, this show will die. So totally different. The promoter back then said, this is what I want. This is the storyline that I want. This is how I need you to sell it. Nowadays, he's saying, now it's funny because Triple H, if you followed him through the years, he's the one who bitched about 40-year-olds taking other people's spots, like Hogan and the rest of them. They're taking time away from people. They're taking spots. He's the one who said, you do it this way. Now all of a sudden he's saying, no, we're going to let the kids, because that's what he calls them, we're going to let the kids run the show. If they want to flip, flop, and fly, no storylines, no selling, using finishers as a normal move because you got to get your stuff in, I'm good with that, because if I don't, it will die. So those are your camps. Your Steve Kern comment and your Triple H rebuttal right there. That is whatever's left of any discussion in pro wrestling. That's the side you fall on. So there you go. Now, then you've got Hogan, who says, you got guys today that look like they should be bagging my groceries. And he made that, not necessarily recently, but he's made that before. And that just adds to the pile of stuff of why modern day wrestlers don't like Hogan. Of course, The Undertaker made a similar comment about how they look, what they do, and how they do it. He walked that back, however, and reconfigured it so he didn't hurt feelings. Hogan, however, has doubled down and continues to make that comment. You then have a Ric Flair comment. WWE Hall of Famer Ric Flair says he stopped giving advice to young wrestlers today because they don't listen. To be honest, quoting Ric Flair, I don't really give it anymore because they'd rather read the internet for some reason. I'm not saying you shouldn't respect the fans' opinions. They don't listen to it, though. I've seen it for myself. They ask me something, then they will walk over and ask somebody who knows nothing about it. I used to respect it when they asked me. Ric Flair. So his take on, and I think it's important before I get into the Netflix era, what I'm saying here. You have guys like Steve Kerner saying, this is how we learn the business. You did what the promoter asked you to do and what the storyline asked for, and you created your character through trial and tribulation. Now, Triple H, who was from that era in a way, now is saying, you let the kids do what they want to do, because if they don't, it's going to die. Well, that doesn't make it right, doesn't make either one right. There's some things we could have learned from the old ways that would have made stuff better. Some guys who may have gotten over that didn't. But at the end of the day, just because you're letting the kids do what they want doesn't necessarily mean it's good for business. I don't know if the current product, the way you see it, is going to last. And the reason I say that is, once again, we're buying a brand. We're not buying a character or a wrestler. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit too, just to show you, just when you think you can't pull the curtain back far enough, they pull it even further back. So, step one, I wanted to establish old school versus new school. It's the ever-ending argument, and I'm sorry, whatever side you're on, it's the Netflix era starting today. Before we continue, please check out my podcast, The Good, Bad, and the Wrestling, on Spotify. Check it out on YouTube at The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James Podcast. And I'm on Facebook at GBW Podcast. Okay, so now let's set up the Netflix show. We reestablished the back and forth between not just traditional and modern wrestling, but the fans. Okay? You got to remember, the fans don't remember anybody in the traditional sense, and the people in the traditional sense aren't big fans of the modern stuff. So that's what you're going to have. Now what I've got up here for you is something that Triple H put out. Triple H calls constant profanity in wrestling lazy as Raw prepares for Netflix. Triple H criticized the use of constant profanity on television, calling it a lazy approach. He talked about the Attitude Era, when swearing and violence were common but eventually lost their impact. He explained that people use these tricks too much, making the show feel forced instead of exciting. When you don't do something for so long, the smaller things can be massive. I lived through the Attitude Era where everybody was bleeding all the time. Everybody's saying what they want to say. It's not edgy anymore. You look like you're trying too hard. You have to be disciplined with it. The game mentioned how Vince McMahon decided to stop the constant swearing and violence at the end of the Attitude Era, which upset many wrestlers. However, Triple H thought it was a good move because relying on bad language was an easy way out. And what is the first thing we get on Netflix? Pat McAfee saying stuff. And then Michael Cole jumps in. And throughout his broadcast, and I'm not a fan of McAfee. I don't know what he brings. I don't know what he brings. These guys that who think they know stuff. I don't get it. His commentary, nothing brings. Does not bring the boys to the yard. So he's right out of the gate. He's cussing during his commentary to, I guess, liven things up. Doesn't work for me. So there, once again, Triple H says one thing but does the other. Just like we're going to let the kids basically run the style of matches they want to run. That's why you got people like Liv Morgan, who has no business being in the ring with Rhea Ripley if that is a true contest. We know Liv Morgan can't whoop Rhea Ripley, but yet she can hit her with 20 DDTs, a chair, and everything else, and we're supposed to believe she can actually beat her. Now, of course, we know Rhea Ripley went over, and then out of nowhere of getting Rhea Ripley getting whooped, she decides, I'm done now, and I'm going to give you a death stare, and I'm just going to hit you twice with my riptide and pin you. Why didn't you do that in the first 2 minutes? Don't get it. But nonetheless, the kids want to play. So you got that going on with the laziness of the profanity. Well, they used it, so what's new? Then the interesting thing is you have the Rhodes Rock feud, and Rock comes out and gives everybody their business and is nice Rock. And you got Cody in the front row. Tell Mama Rhodes I'm still her favorite or whatever he said. And they're all hugging and nicey-nicey. They go in the back, and I've got some pictures posted here. They're drinking together. Just a year before, he was beating the crap out of him. All that stuff. It's the Netflix era. It's not about believing it. It's not. They're okay now, just like The Rock turning on his Instagram. And I know a bunch of people said, oh, he gave Triple H the cold shoulder. No, he didn't. They hugged. He went and talked to someone else and didn't see Triple H raise his hand for a handshake. Triple H patted him on the shoulder. Everybody moved on. It's no big deal. Everybody's a booker now all of a sudden on the internet and the fans. Everybody knows the inside scoop. Everybody knows how to book matches better than everybody else. It just blows my mind. You can't just sit back and take it in. They're moving the curtain back further than they've ever had before. Now you get to watch them enter and leave the ring, and in the back, and what they have to eat, and who they talk to. I just beat this guy with a hammer, and now we're going to sit down and have a latte. You get to see that. So just sit back and enjoy it, modern fans. Now everybody's so quick to judge and jump on things and create things that aren't there, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. But nonetheless, that's one of the takeaways I got when I'm watching, and I can't help it. I'm more of a traditional mind. I don't know why all of a sudden everybody's nicey-nicey and I'm supposed to forget the year-long feud to get the story finished. Now it's okay to make fun of Mama Rhodes, but she was crying and slapped people, and I don't get it. Then the big one. Hogan gets booed. And I saw on there, and I've got a couple posts. Never seen this happen before. Did you watch Bash at the Beach in 96? Not only did he get booed, he had stuff thrown at him. Whether in wrestling, any press is really good press if you think about it. And I know what you're saying. Well, he's a racist and he said stuff. He said racist things. You're right. And was that good or bad press? Did that help him? No, it didn't. There's exceptions to every rule. But in this case, people are talking about Hulk Hogan from the minute he walked out to the minute he left, and they're talking about his beer. And they're going to be bitching about Hulk Hogan thanks to the modern wrestlers not liking Hulk Hogan. It's cool not to like Hulk Hogan. I always liked Savage. I always liked Piper. Well, you were like two. How do you know? Really? Come on, guys. A lot of the current roster didn't even know Hogan. If they did, it was his later Hollywood years. So right now, because whether it's politics or not, I'm not going to get into, because everybody popped for The Undertaker. They forget him. They forget what he has said, what he has done, and that he's a Trump supporter. They love The Undertaker. Why? Rhea Ripley loves The Undertaker. CM Punk loves The Undertaker. Seth Rollins loves The Undertaker. Kevin Owens loves The Undertaker. The Usos, every freaking Samoan on the roster, part of the whatever it is they're doing, love The Undertaker. So therefore, he gets a pass. Everybody I mentioned dislikes Hogan. So Hogan can do the exact same things. Now, I'm not saying The Undertaker made racial comments. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is Hogan comes out and they boo him. Well, good. You're in California. What do you expect? And you know what? Boo Hulk Hogan. He's been booed before. He's been booed worse. And it wasn't 100% boo. There were people clapping and taking pictures. And those very same people you'll probably see in line waiting 2 hours to get their picture taken with him. It just blows my mind. And I'm not going to jump into he's a legend, give him his due. If you don't like Hulk Hogan, you don't like Hulk Hogan. I'm not going to force you to like Hulk Hogan. I don't know Hulk Hogan as a person, so I'm not going to make any judgments on him. Just like I don't know Undertaker. I'm not going to make any judgments on him. I just know that they're romanticizing this boo. So he got booed. Did he get booed out of the building? No, he didn't get booed out of the building. They said that the New Day and the NXT people got a better pop. Well, good for them. Their current product. Hogan's 70 years old coming out. He was asked to come out to tell everybody to make it official. Real American Beer is connected to the WWE, brother. We're a tag team, brother. It's the old shtick. He's 70 years old. What do you expect from a bunch of people in there that have moved on from Hulk Hogan? Why do you think Hulk Hogan has been so reluctant to come back? He's moved on, just like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Those guys have moved on and want to do their own thing. I don't get it. But we're talking about Hulk Hogan, aren't we? So something positive happened for him, boo or not. So once again, just wanted to get those little tidbits from the Netflix era. Once again, we're going to pull the curtain back and show you everything. I hated you 2 months ago. You're my buddy. Have a drink with me. We're cool now. We're cool now. Got it? Everybody's cool now. I can be heel. I can be face. It doesn't matter. Whatever the temperature in the room is, that's where I'm going to be. That is modern wrestling. You can do 100 different moves that used to be finishers that are devastating. Doesn't hurt me at all. I'm 150 pounds. I'm 5'10". I shouldn't be in the ring, but I can be now. That's modern wrestling. That's the Netflix era. Anyone. I don't have to work out. I don't have to be in shape. As long as I'm something, you can push me and put the brand behind me, and now I'm somebody, and I can tell the fans to like me, and they'll like me, and there you go. It's a totally different game. With that being said, don't forget to check me out on Spotify, The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling Tony James Podcast, YouTube, The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James Podcast, and hit me up on Facebook at GBW Podcast. So now I want to finish up here with a couple tidbits. Once again, I just wanted to establish that lifelong thing that's going to happen, which is traditional versus modern. We are in the Netflix era. I'm sorry, traditional wrestling isn't coming back. It's not. If you're a believer, good for you. I'm all for if you want to bring back people, that's great. But it's not going to resonate well because the flow of the blow, as they say, is what the fans and the internet fans follow. If everybody in the backstage area likes a certain legend, then everyone likes him and the other guy's crap. That's how it works. So moving forward, I talked briefly about how the modern fans know everything and make things up. And the first thing I wanted to share with you was this thing. And then when I was scrolling, I found it made me laugh when I saw it. Unscripted. The promo between CM Punk and Seth Rollins on Raw last night was completely unscripted. Well, how do we know it was unscripted? Because someone in the back told us it was unscripted? Is that how we know? And who told what? And I'm going to bet it was scripted because segments and everything are set to the second. To say it like it's now someone has the inside scoop because somebody knows somebody, or you could tell by the way he flared his nostrils. And CM Punk's known for pipe bombs, unscripted. Once again, everybody knows everything. You just can't sit back. That's one of the problems with the Netflix era wrestling. You can't just sit back and enjoy it. It's a TV show. You don't sit back and watch whatever it is, what's on, what the TV shows now they got on Hulu or Netflix or whatever. Oh, that was unscripted. And you're watching Dexter. Oh, that was unscripted. No, it wasn't. It's in the script. This just happens to be live, so they can't change it, but that doesn't mean it's not scripted, whatever. So that's the other one aspect. The other new aspect of the Netflix era, and I talked about them pulling back just when you don't think you can't pull that curtain back any further. You just can't do it. Yeah, you can. Here's one. The ringside roster, wrestling news and rumor. Ludwig Kaiser comments on his real life partner, Tiffany Stratton, becoming the women's champion on SmackDown. Absolutely wholesome. You love to see it. Ludwig Kaiser, it's Tiffy time. Heart. Okay, so Ludwig's supposed to be a heel, right? And she was introduced at ringside. And I love this because right beside her was the Bella who got a big pop, and everybody was saying she got a big pop. Well, yeah, she turned around and stuck her butt in the camera. It's TNA. All you got to do is look at the women and look at TNA. And which women can do it without the TNA? Because there's very few that can. And like Rhea Ripley, who can do it, chooses to dress the way with her butt hanging out. And that's fine if that's what she wants to do. She's got the talent. That's what bothers me. There's only a few people that I feel could give her a real match, and they're force feeding these other girls to her. But this is another thing. They date within. Everybody's dating someone across heels and faces. There's no such thing as heels and faces. I'm supposed to get that Ludwig Kaiser's this terrible guy and he's an up-and-comer, but he's dating Tiffy. And so now we love him because it's a TV show. And was this scripted? Just like with the Hogan booing, the real reason Hogan was booed. Was there a fake reason Hogan was booed? No, Hogan was booed. Doesn't matter. Hogan, 50% of the building booed Hogan. The other 50 liked it. And of course, the boos are always going to be louder than the cheers. That's just what happened. So is this scripted? Ludwig commenting on his girlfriend? No, because at the end of the day, they don't care. And that's why it's hard to watch it. It's hard to get into it. It's the same match. The current fan isn't programmed, isn't wired like a traditional fan. So it doesn't bother them to see 10 TDTs, 15 kickouts, a 5-minute match, the same match every time with different people. It doesn't bother them because they're more worried if Ludwig Kaiser commented on Tiffy time because Tiffy got the belt. And that's we're more worried about. We're more worried about The Miz and his wife in a reality show than we are The Miz wrestling. Thank God he stays in reality and not in the ring. All of the connections in the back. Who's dating who? Who's doing what? Who's not shaking hands? I hated you. I made you bleed. I made fun of your mom, but now we're friends. Netflix era, baby. And then finally, I got to throw in AEW. I love this one. And I don't follow AEW, but I was taking a look at this. There's a picture on the top there of Edge versus Jericho at WrestleMania, and then their confrontation current day. And you look at the comparison, and then, of course, the Attitude Era, the two Attitude Era legends. Chris Jericho came face-to-face on an AEW Collision, and the crowd absolutely loved it. And what they did is they blocked the picture off. As you can see, the first 3 rows of fans. And then in the back, I don't know what's going on there, but they're not fans. But then when you get the wide scale, the picture I showed before this, AEW is just not bringing people in. And I think it's because the Netflix era. I can have that, or I can have the well-polished branding. It's the brand of WWE. AEW hasn't established themselves as a brand. You get more involved in WWE on who's dating who, and I talked to so-and-so, and that was unscripted. It's like they're trying to conjure up real-life conflict in place of what they should already be doing because they can't get it done in the ring. It's just amazing. Well, listen, I've taken too much of your time already. I just wanted to kick off the year and get this off my chest. What a way to start in the 2025 podcast season. You'll hear from me from time to time at Spotify at The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast, YouTube, The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling of Tony James podcast, and Facebook, GBW podcast. Hit me up, like me, subscribe to me, follow me, help me out, throw a brother a bone, and boo me if you need to. And no fake booze, though. Give me real booze. Give me real Hulk Hogan booze. I want them. I need them. It's not Tiffy time in my life. You're not going to get to know who has my title. You don't have to go home. You can't stay here, but God is good. And I will see you at the matches.
Yeah.